It's 12 past 3.
Alrighty, hello.
Hello.
How are you this evening?
I'm great. How are you?
Fantastic. How was your week?
It's been an interesting week.
Or 2 weeks, I guess it's been 2 weeks.
It's been an interesting 2 weeks.
Anything interesting?
I just learned and realized that, did you know they have a world's tiniest Ouija board?
No, I did not know that.
I know. It was very interesting to see, and it had all the components too.
Really?
Yeah.
Did you get it?
I did not.
Why not?
No, because the Ouija board at home told me not to.
Oh. No, you have to get that for the collection.
I know. I want to go back and get it.
That's cool. I'd love to see that too.
I know. They have a lot of world tiniest things. They have like the tiniest Barney.
Only interested in the Ouija board.
Yeah.
But we won't use it.
No.
No.
It'll stay in its package.
Yes. Alrighty. So what do you have for us tonight?
Tonight, I will be talking about postpartum depression, postpartum psychosis, and their history in the true crime world.
Heavy subject.
Very heavy subject.
All right.
Society often views and expects motherhood as one of the happiest and most meaningful experiences a person can have. We're surrounded by images of smiling mothers holding newborn babies, celebrating their first moments together, and talking about how becoming a parent changed their lives. What we don't often hear or talk about is what happens when becoming a mother doesn't feel the way society says it should. What happens when exhaustion turns into hopelessness, when sadness becomes overwhelming, and in the most severe situations, what happens when a mother loses touch with reality? These are questions that aren't discussed nearly enough. Tonight, I want to talk about postpartum depression and postpartum psychosis, two very different conditions that can dramatically affect a mother's thoughts, emotions, and behavior. I also want to talk about how these conditions sometimes intersect with the world of true crime, but most importantly, I'm not going to talk about any particular case. Instead, I want to focus on the psychology, symptoms, misconceptions, and why understanding postpartum mental illness is so important when we discuss crimes involving mothers and children. Before we begin, this episode contains discussions of postpartum mental illness, suicide, self-harm, psychosis, and violence involving mothers and children. If those topics are difficult for you, please take care of yourself while listening. First, I want to talk about postpartum. Postpartum is often overlooked. Having a baby is an enormous physical and psychological event. After childbirth, a mother's body goes through major changes. Hormone levels change dramatically, the body begins recovering from pregnancy and delivery, and sleep becomes unpredictable, and sometimes extremely limited. At the same time, there is suddenly another human being who depends on you for almost everything. Feedings, diaper changes, appointments, nighttime wake-ups, and an enormous amount of emotional responsibility. For many mothers, this adjustment is difficult even when everything goes well. There's also something commonly called the baby blues. The baby blues can involve crying, irritability, anxiety, mood swings, and feeling emotionally overwhelmed. They're very common and usually improve within about 2 weeks. But there's an important distinction. Postpartum depression is not simply having a few difficult days. Postpartum depression is a serious mental health condition that can significantly interfere with a mother's ability to function and enjoy life. Postpartum depression, often called PPD, can occur during pregnancy or after childbirth. An important thing we need to understand is that postpartum depression doesn't mean a mother doesn't love her baby.
Wait, so that can occur during pregnancy?
Yes.
Wow.
which you would think it wouldn't because it's like postpartum.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't think I've ever heard of a mother being in a depression during the pregnancy.
I think it's just not really talked about or has a stigma behind it.
Yeah.
Believing that having postpartum depression, meaning that a mother doesn't love her baby, is an extremely harmful misconception. A mother can love her child deeply and still experience postpartum depression. Depression can change the way a person experiences themselves, their relationships, and their future. A mother may look at her baby and feel love, but at the same time feel completely overwhelmed by the belief that she isn't good enough. She might think, I'm failing, I'm not a good mother, my family would be better off without me, or even my baby deserves someone better than me. Other symptoms can include persistent sadness, anxiety, exhaustion, irritability, difficulty sleeping, changes in appetite, loss of interest in activities, difficulty bonding with the baby, feelings of guilt or worthlessness, and thoughts of death or self-harm. New parents are already expected to be tired, stressed, and have trouble sleeping. So sometimes the symptoms of depression can be dismissed as simply being part of a new parent. That's why recognizing changes in behavior and mood is important. If someone who recently gave birth is becoming increasingly withdrawn, hopeless, overwhelmed, or unable to function, that shouldn't simply be brushed off as new mom stress. There are many different factors that can contribute to postpartum depression. A person's mental health history can matter, so can stress, lack of support, difficult pregnancy or delivery experiences, sleep deprivation, and other physical and emotional factors. Fortunately, postpartum depression is treatable. Treatment can include therapy, medication when appropriate, support from family and friends, and other forms of professional care. The important thing is recognizing that needing help doesn't make someone a bad mother. Now, I want to move on to a condition that is much more rare, but extremely important to understand: postpartum psychosis. Postpartum psychosis is a psychiatric emergency and is different from postpartum depression. A person experiencing psychosis may lose contact with reality. They may experience hallucinations, hear or see things that aren't actually there, develop delusions, which are strongly held beliefs that aren't based in reality, and they may also become extremely paranoid, confused, or disorganized.
So are there any statistics on the percentage of mothers that are impacted by these conditions?
So I did actually look this up. Postpartum depression affects approximately 10 to 20%, or about 1 in 7 to 8 of new mothers. It can start during pregnancy, like we said, or up to a year after birth, with long-lasting sadness, low energy, heavy crying, trouble bonding with the baby, and feelings of worthlessness. While postpartum psychosis, on the other hand, is much more rare, affecting about 0.1 to 0.2%, or 1 to 2 out of every 1,000 women after childbirth. This usually starts within days or the first 2 weeks after delivery.
Wow, the depression can start up to a year after?
Yeah.
Wow, did not know that. And that statistic on the psychosis for how low it is, which is a good thing, but it must make it all the more difficult for somebody who is experiencing that.
Yeah.
Because there must not be a lot of help out there for that.
Yeah. I imagine it's very difficult, not only getting help and recognizing it, but also admitting that you're needing help.
Yeah, that's the recognizing and the getting help.
Yeah.
Or for somebody, a loved one, to recognize that.
Actually, family members and partners are often the very first people to recognize postpartum psychosis symptoms, because the mother usually loses touch with reality and is unable to see herself that she's struggling. So it's very important for family members or any loved ones to treat it as an emergency and don't argue or reason with any delusions that the mother may experience. Someone with postpartum psychosis can have dramatic mood changes, and sometimes their behavior can become completely unfamiliar to the people who know them. Imagine suddenly believing that someone is trying to harm your baby, or believing that people around you are secretly communicating with you, or even hearing a voice that other people can't hear. To someone who isn't experiencing psychosis, these ideas may sound impossible. But for someone who is experiencing psychosis, those beliefs can feel completely real. That's what makes postpartum psychosis so dangerous. The person may not recognize that they are sick, and they may not understand that what they're experiencing is a hallucination or delusion. When symptoms such as hallucinations, severe confusion, paranoia, or delusions appear after childbirth, it should be treated as an emergency. Hospitalization and/or medication may be necessary.
So with the treatment, can the mother get past the psychosis, or would it be something that they would be dealing with for the rest of their lives?
So the most severe acute symptoms typically last 2 to 12 weeks. However, a full recovery where the person returns to their usual self can take up to 6 to 12 months or longer.
Wow, but they can recover.
Yes.
Well, that's good, at least.
With the right resources, and I imagine with very early diagnosis.
But having to deal with that for 12 months would be scary.
That's got to be hard. I imagine that's more because it may not be they're experiencing the delusions for that long, but I imagine they're going to be also dealing with the depression and maybe the effects of the treatment as well.
Right.
And having to work past that for that long. Now that we've talked about postpartum depression and postpartum psychosis, I want to talk about how it intersects with true crime. True crime is often about trying to understand how something terrible could happen. When there is a crime involving a mother and her child, people often have an especially difficult time understanding it. We have strong cultural expectations about motherhood because we are taught that mothers are supposed to protect their children, nurture them, and sacrifice for them. So when a mother is accused of harming her child, the public reaction can be incredibly emotional. Headlines may describe the mother as evil. People online may immediately judge her character and even ask how a mother could do that. But there is a difference between asking that question emotionally and asking it psychologically. The psychological approach asks, what was happening in the person's mind? Was the person experiencing hallucinations, delusions? Were family members noticing unusual behavior? Was the person receiving treatment? What happened immediately before the offense? And most importantly, what was the person's mental state at the time? Now, the answers to these questions don't excuse criminal behavior, but they can definitely help us understand it. It's important to note that mental illness does not equal violence. In fact, the vast majority of people experiencing mental illness are not violent. The same is true for mothers experiencing postpartum depression. It is also true that most mothers who experience postpartum psychosis do not commit crimes.
So are there statistics on how many women who experience postpartum psychosis actually are involved in a crime?
In medical literature, it is stated that approximately 96% remain nonviolent towards others. Severe acts of harm occur in an estimated of 4% of cases.
So a very small percentage to a very small percentage of women who actually experience the psychosis to begin with.
Yes. We may also wonder why postpartum psychosis appear in some true crime discussions. It's because when a rare psychiatric disorder intersects with an extremely serious crime, the circumstances become important to understanding what happened. This is where responsible true crime storytelling matters. If it is stated that a mother became mentally ill and committed a crime, it can create a dangerous misunderstanding and can make listeners think that mental illness causes violence, which is not accurate. A better approach is to explain that severe psychiatric illness can sometimes affect perception, judgment, and behavior, while also making it clear that most people with mental illness are not dangerous. That distinction matters. This is also where forensic psychology becomes relevant. When a serious crime occurs and mental illness may be involved, psychologists can help the legal system understand the person's psychological state.
So what exactly does a forensic psychologist do during a case like this?
Good question. So a forensic psychologist may review medical records, examine previous mental health history, conduct interviews, evaluate symptoms, and examine what was happening around the time of the alleged offense, and they will often present these findings in court. One of the most important questions is, what was the person's mental state at the time of the offense? It's important because having a mental health diagnosis doesn't automatically mean someone isn't legally responsible for their actions. The legal system has specific standards for determining criminal responsibility, and those standards vary depending on the jurisdiction. So forensic psychology isn't simply saying this person had a mental illness, therefore they aren't responsible. Instead, forensic psychologists provide information that can help the court understand the relationship between psychological symptoms and behavior. That information can become particularly important when psychosis is involved. Something that I actually looked up a little after I did my notes but thought was interesting to add was that neither postpartum depression nor postpartum psychosis has a standalone category in the DSM-5, which is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders that we study in psychology. Basically a big manual of all the mental disorders.
Right, I remember reading about that, and I know they update it periodically.
Yes.
But it's crazy that they're not in there.
Yeah. And without a clear, dedicated diagnostic category, getting funding for specialized care becomes much harder, and failing to name it as a distinct emergency leaves families and patients vulnerable to tragic health outcomes.
That's sad.
Yeah. You would think that they would have that in there already.
Yeah.
I want to bring up also why mothers may not ask for help. One of the biggest issues surrounding postpartum mental health is that mothers may not recognize their symptoms, or they may be afraid to talk about them. Imagine a new mother experiencing frightening thoughts and the shame from that keeping them silent. Family members may also miss warning signs because they don't know what they're looking for. They may assume a new mother is simply tired, stressed, or that the unusual behavior is temporary. The symptoms such as hallucinations, severe paranoia, delusions, extreme confusion, or rapidly changing behavior require immediate attention. Recognizing these warning signs is incredibly important, and loved ones can play a major role. If someone seems to be losing touch with reality, taking the situation seriously can potentially prevent a tragedy.
And I imagine because it is so rare and people don't talk about it that much, that it's hard for people to recognize what's going on.
Yeah. I imagine it's very difficult because, again, it gets confused with mothers being tired and sleep deprived.
Yeah.
That brings us down to one of the most important parts of this conversation, which is prevention. If postpartum depression and postpartum psychosis can be recognized earlier, mothers can potentially receive treatment before symptoms become more severe. That means we need to make conversations about postpartum mental health normal. Mothers should be asked how they are emotionally along with how they are physically postpartum. Major changes should be taken seriously rather than dismissed as being a tired mother.
Well, I would hope that they are asked those questions when they go for their follow-ups. Just like anytime you go to the doctor's office now, they seem to ask you if you are safe at home, if you feel like you're going to hurt yourself or hurt somebody else. I would think they would take that care to the next level with new mothers.
I imagine they do. I think the issue is that whether or not mothers are going to be honest about how they're feeling.
Right.
I think because there's such a stigma around it and they feel shame, they may not feel comfortable saying their symptoms that they're having.
Yeah, that makes sense. Sad, but makes sense.
Yeah. That's why we need to normalize the conversation of postpartum mental health so that mothers are comfortable asking for help, as asking for help is not a sign of weakness. When we talk about postpartum depression and postpartum psychosis, we're talking about more than mental illness. We're talking about mothers, families, stigma, and in some tragic situations, we're talking about crime. Postpartum depression can make a mother feel hopeless, exhausted, guilty, or disconnected. And postpartum psychosis can take things even further by disrupting a person's connection with reality. These conditions are different, but both deserve attention and treatment. And when they appear in true crime stories, they deserve to be discussed responsibly. We shouldn't assume that mental illness causes violence. We shouldn't use mental illness as an excuse for criminal behavior, but we also shouldn't ignore the psychological factors that may have contributed to a tragedy. Motherhood doesn't make someone immune to mental illness, and struggling with mental health doesn't make someone a bad mother. Sometimes the person who appears to be holding everything together is the person who desperately needs someone to ask, "Are you okay?" and then actually listen to the answer. The last thing I want to bring up is the suicide hotline number, which is 988. Please reach out if you need help, or if you notice someone who is struggling, please reach out to be their support and encourage them to get help themselves. That is all I have tonight.
Okay, well, very, very informative, very tough subject.
Yes.
But something that needs to be talked about.
Definitely.
It's still a little early, but this feels like a good place to stop tonight. So I will save my story, and we'll pick it back up next time. Anything else before we wrap it up?
I think that's it.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for listening. Join us next time for more weird and creepy stories. Please join us on our website at 12past3.com and connect with us on our social media, or you can even email us at podcast@12past3.com.
Good night.
Good night.